Hello, everybody who's here and everybody who's not. My name is William Wyatt, and this is a meeting of the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance here at Sac State. Welcome to it. Today's topic is broadly disability in academia. That is an enormous topic. Therefore, there's a lot of sort of content embedded in this slideshow, but in the same breath, I want to be a little bit more conversational about it because the sheer complexity of this topic means that individuals' experiences are going to be many and varied, and we want to hear about those to the extent that we can. So we have about an hour to cover some stuff. Let's get into it. Agenda, we're going to do some announcements. We have a visitor from the Associated Students Incorporated to make an announcement for us. She'll be sharing the screen in a second here. And then the topic, history, contemporary problems, resources, and legal protections, ideas for how to increase accessibility, and then a free discussion and probably, hopefully, building off of the prior point, increasing accessibility. Okay. So we have some announcements. Let's, if I understand right, yeah. Nicole, if you are here, if I'm right, you're here presenting the ASI announcement. I will turn the screen share over to you. You should be able to do it. And if you're good to go, then by all means, have at it.
All right, 1 second while I start sharing my screen. Let's see. Okay. Can I get a verbal confirmation that you can all see my screen, please?
I can see it.
Perfect.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Well, my name is Nicole Oneto, and I am the elections officer with ASI. And I'm here to talk to you for just a couple minutes about ASI student government elections. So let's start off with a status update where I'll give you a little bit of background information. When I first started my job in 2019 with ASI, we were coming off of a 10.5% voter turnout, which seems like a really low number. But in terms of student government voter turnout across the CSU system, that's actually really good. And when I came in, my goal was to increase that voter turnout to 12.5%. And we were working in the right direction. Things were looking great. And then the pandemic hit. And as I'm sure you can all very easily relate to, we had to do a lot of pivoting. And we did our very best to adapt to the virtual landscape. And we came out with a 6.5% voter turnout, which was actually way better than we thought we were going to get. So this past year, with a little bit more experience doing online programming, we were able to achieve a 9% voter turnout in the 2021 election, which is very close to a regular year. So that's really, really good. But I want to take it a step further. I want to do a little bit better. There's always room for improvement. And so you can see here in the red that there were 3 college director positions on the board with no candidates. So the students in the College of Business, the College of Education, and the College of Graduate Studies, which, never mind, I'll save that. That's a long-winded story. All of those students didn't have the opportunity to choose their own representative. And when that happens, the burden comes to us and we need to appoint the student to be that representative for them. And while they often do a fantastic job, it's still not ideal because students really do deserve the chance to select their own representatives that they feel will serve them the best. In addition, there were 3 positions that were uncontested, meaning that there was one candidate. Sorry, my roommates are being really loud, so I got distracted. There was one candidate for each of these positions, which is slightly better, but it still doesn't provide for that opportunity of choice that we want students to be able to have. And so that was the Vice President of University Affairs, the College of Arts and Letters, and the College of Natural Sciences and Mathematics. So with all of that in mind, my goal for the next election is to have no vacant spots in the whole board of directors on the whole ballot. And there are 14 elected positions, and these are 9 of them. These are known as college director positions. There are actually 7 colleges on campus but we have 2 additional positions because graduate students and undeclared students deserve representation as well. And while these 9 are not the only positions on the ballot, they seem to be the ones that are the most neglected and need the most help. So that's why I've highlighted them here. So why is this important? Again, as I've kind of said already, each student really deserves a chance to choose a college director or executive director that would represent their needs as a student the best. And this is your chance to step up and show how much you love your college and your university and make a change. And I also want to point out this little note here at the bottom that says you absolutely don't need any experience in government or politics to be on the ASI board of directors. You do deal with similar kinds of processes and procedures. There is authoring legislation and some serious board meetings because you are really running a $10 million organization. But in a lot of ways, it really does resemble the high school leadership that you saw in your student council there. So student leadership really is a better term for it in a lot of ways than student government. And I think that change in phrasing, even though it is slight, I think it makes it a lot more mentally accessible, a lot less daunting for sure. So how can you help make this happen? There's kind of 2 opportunities that are laid out in front of you, and you have the chance to choose both. And this was supposed to be a happy face, but it didn't quite go through. The first one is run for office. And this is a great opportunity. You guys are movers and shakers on campus. You are out here making things happen in your club. And you are exactly the type of people that we're looking for to run for office. You're the leaders in the making. And so I would definitely recommend looking into our website, asi.csus.edu, and just kind of poking through our Run for Office page and learning a little bit more and seeing if that sounds appealing to you in any way. Whether that is a path you want to go down or not, I encourage all of you to vote when the time comes in April. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So keeping those 2 opportunities in mind, these are the types of information you'll need in order to effectively take advantage of those. So when considering running for office, you'll want to know event information about my elections information sessions, which I should have included the flyer for here, but I will send that to you when I get back to the office on Monday. And so in these information sessions, I kind of talk about what I'm talking to here now, but I go a little bit more in depth. I talk about what ASI is as a broader organization, and a little bit closer look at what it means to run for office, committee opportunities, etc. So I highly recommend coming and seeing me at one of those. It's less than an hour out of your time, and I think you'll get a real depth of knowledge that you'll appreciate later down the line. You'll definitely want to know, if you're considering running for office, when candidate applications are open. It says early spring, but in particular, it's on the first day of the spring semester. And those will stay open until early March, so you'll have plenty of time to get those applications in. And in the meantime, like I said, visit our website for more information on running for office, because there's too much information for me to go over now. But yeah, it's very accessible and easy to find on our website. Now, thinking about voting, again, you'll want to come to those information sessions because, like I was kind of saying, I cover a lot of different ASI related topics, and one of those is voting and what you'll want to know when getting ready for that. We also hold some really cool, really fun, really awesome election events. First is the ballot draw, where we find out the order in which the candidates will be listed on the ballot. Then we have our candidate forums, where you get a really good look at what the candidates are running for, why they're running, how they want to help you. Those are a really good time, very informational. And then we have our election kickoff, which happens on the first day of voting. And we just kind of celebrate the election season. And then on the final day of voting, right when the polls close, we have the election results party. And that is super duper fun and exciting because we find out who won the election. So definitely, once those dates do come out, which will be probably pretty soon, definitely mark your calendar because you won't want to miss them. You'll want to know the election dates. Those were just approved this Wednesday, so I can tell you what they are now. Past clubs that I've presented to, I haven't been able to tell them, so you're pretty special. The election will be happening April 6th and 7th. So if you have your calendar handy, go ahead and mark those dates down now so you don't forget. And again, asi.csus.edu for more information on voting. So with all that information in front of you, what can you do with it? How can you turn that info into action? Club officers, share these opportunities with club members. I will be in contact with you via email, sending you all the information as it comes to me. And I would really appreciate if you would pass it along via Slack or GroupMe or whatever app you use to communicate. Announce it during club meetings or via email, and post it on your club's social media pages. In addition, club members, share the information with others on campus. Keep your fellow club members accountable and make sure they vote when the time comes. Let your friends, roommates, and classmates know about what's going on in the world of ASI student government. And make sure you take advantage of all of these opportunities yourself. It would be pretty sad if you told all your friends and made them do it and you forgot for some reason. And also, everybody, please make sure you follow us on Instagram if you have it, at Sac State ASI, because you'll get all of the updates that you'll need without me even having to tell you. And please notice the little green box down here in the corner that lets you know it'll be important to practice this type of communication, like posting on your club's social media pages, so that you're ready to go when the Cash for Clubs program starts during election season. Without getting into it too in depth, I will give you a little teaser if you're not already familiar. Cash for Clubs is a program where during the election, if you have a club agreement form on file with ASI, you are eligible to win or to earn is a better word, $5 per vote that you receive. And you can receive votes from any student on Sac State campus that decides to vote for you. So that money can rack up pretty quick. And the top 5 most voted clubs will receive an additional cash prize. If you're interested in more information, please email me. I will tell you what my email is at the very end. But definitely keep this in mind. It's a pretty good opportunity for clubs like yours. All right, we've made it to the last slide. And right after I finish talking in just a moment, I will take questions. But if you don't have a question now and you think of a question in 10 minutes when I'm already gone from this meeting, or tomorrow, or next month, and you thought you missed your chance to ask me a question, you absolutely did not. I have given you my email address. It is asi.ogeo@csus.edu, and I've also included my office hours so that you know when you can expect a response from me. So write that information down if you'd like. I will also send this presentation to the contact I've been speaking to through this club. And so you will have that information readily available if you need it. So with all of that said, I know that was a lot of information. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, thank you for putting all that info in the chat. That is so nice. I appreciate that. Questions? If there aren't any, that's awesome, because that just means we're all on the same page. And so I'm going to give it one more second for questions. All right, I didn't want to talk over anybody. Okay, thank you so much for allowing me to speak to you today. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all and get this information out, because it's really important to me, and I hope it's important. You find it important, because it really is important to you, whether you know it or not. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to say stingers up. Thank you.
Thank you. Feel free to stay for the rest of our meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I can't quite make it today. I do have other engagements, but this is a really cool, I didn't know this club existed on campus, and I logged in and you guys seem like really cool people. So I might check you out on another day. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll catch you around. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize if that seemed like an overly long announcement for an hour-long meeting. ASI is our student voice on campus, effectively. It's involved in student governance, and obviously it runs a very substantial organization. So it's important to have that entity, ASI, well understood by as many people as possible. And in fact, it would be awesome if it could be partially run by disabled students. right? If we had a member of Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance on that board of directors. In any case, thank you all for bearing with us through all that information. That will be obviously preserved in the recording of this meeting, and it will be available via Nicole at the email address in the chat right now. And it'll be obviously everything that was there, I think, is also contained on ASI's website if you are interested or want to promote that. But that is not, strictly speaking, what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about disability in academia more generally. So let's go. I'm going to riff a little bit on the history of disability in higher education because it's a bad one. In general, throughout most of human history, education, again, in general, has been for the elite. Like, you wouldn't get to know more than you needed to know to be a serf or a servant or whatever you were for most of our time. Therefore, as trends have gone toward popularizing education, making it more available to more people, various newer other demographics, non-social elites, have been brought into the fold, have had education made more readily and substantially available. But that is a very slow process. Obviously, we had one of the sort of pivotal issues in the civil rights discourse in the 60s was the integration of schools, making primary education more accessible to more racial demographics. Similarly, and a little bit similarly, conceptually similarly, you have a population now of disabled students who are basically one of the final demographics to be thought of in the process of making education more popular, more accessible to more people. And as a sort of hangover from this history, as the upshot of it all, the whole system of education is essentially designed in a very ableist way. And to the extent that it is made more accessible, it is made more accessible in ways that are sort of superimposed onto the old system, the old guard. For example, we're going to talk about various ways, but one of the things that I'm going to bring up right now is that regardless, if you're in the United States, almost regardless of your otherwise status, getting an education is going to cost you a lot of money because, again, it's for the elites. It's for people who have loads and loads of money to spare. So it's not designed structurally, governmentally, to be accessible, financially speaking. So when you go into higher education, you're going to incur a lot of tasks, a lot of stress associated with paying for it, including but not limited to doing things like applying for scholarships, getting a job to pay living expenses. Maybe if you're disabled, dealing with the Department of Rehabilitation, that can be surprisingly difficult. And all sorts of other sort of financial constraints, ways that are designed to make education more accessible, but again, superimposed onto a system that is designed to be as inaccessible as it could get away with being for very many decades. So everything we're going to talk about is like a product of that history, and that's something that we should bear in mind. Again, there's a sort of systemic point to make here that when you talk about a problem like this, it's usually not like any one person's fault. It's kind of the system that's your enemy. So some problems that arise from this history, and again, this is something we want to talk about because there are going to be a lot more than than we, the officer team, were able to come up with. But things like a general problem would be like the high pressure situation that you find yourself in higher education, where you have only so much time because you have only so much, money and life to get higher education. Therefore, the world being as complex as it is, the world being such that you need a lot of information to make a life for yourself, essentially, you wind up in a sort of situation where the amount of stuff you have to learn is far disproportionate to the time you have in which to learn it. That's a problem that's getting worse, obviously, the more complex our world gets, until such time as we give, more time for education to take place. And it also leads to some things like specialization, but that's a different set of problems. Anyway, yeah, and that sort of that very high pressure situation, that phenomenon where we find ourselves having to deal with a situation for which human beings are probably not designed as a species, is obviously very bad for everybody. It's a very high stress situation, and it's only made more stressful by, again, those sort of financial holdovers. But it's significantly worse if you are disabled in some substantial way. And I guess what we mean by disabled is that it is substantial. So things like the high pressure environment, the sort of feeling of that can be very taxing for people with maybe mental health disabilities or neurodivergent situations. The pace at which you are required to work in most classroom settings, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience here a little bit, the pace at which you're required to work to do well in most classes involves reading significantly faster than I am able to, which is to say that I have to get very good at other sorts of things, other like corollary skills, in order to make it in a lot of classroom settings that require lots of reading. And this is and what we're sort of driving at with all of these examples and many more that hopefully we'll sort of put on the table during discussion, is that this all sort of arises from a history in which only the economic and intellectual elites really needed or had access to higher education, and a system now that is only beginning to really sort of accommodate other sorts of people, other sort of one of the upshots of that is that the zeitgeist involved in being a professor isn't necessarily disabled friendly, isn't necessarily one that puts a high premium on making things accessible for as many people as possible. So you occasionally get situations where you ask a professor for reasonable accommodations and are not able to get them. From my understanding, that happens. It rarely happens to me because I rarely ask. I have some kind of pride against it. But that too is an issue when students have a mentality to which disability is not really compatible, right? When you need extra help and you're like me, chances are you fail. You don't ask for it, even if it's there. So if this seems very disoriented as an explanation of some contemporary problems, two things: defer to the list. It's better than my presentation, but also that is what you would expect. That sort of disoriented feeling thought process is what you would expect from a situation that is this sort of complicated, this layered, this mired in history and social psychology and so forth. When we talk about higher education, we are talking about an extremely broad topic that is deeply involved with the rest of our society. So when a professor, I don't know, if you ask for a professor for extra time and get back, your disability isn't documented, or you're not specifically allocated extra time by SSWD or something like that, then it's hard to sort of know where that comes from, but it comes from a larger society, and it's a problem, but it's one that it's a problem both with the professor and with the system and everything else as well. And that's something that I personally feel we need to sort of drive home, because it's be so easy to take a situation like that and hold one person, one institution, one policy, or one anything else responsible. Whereas that to approach it from that angle, to take that view of it, wouldn't easily lend itself to solving problems. Okay. But there are things you can do about it. And most of these you'll notice are post hoc attempts at reconciliation, attempts at protections. The Americans with Disabilities Act has, as from my brief, admittedly, research as two subheadings for specifically disability in higher education, titles 2 and 3. In those, they sort of lay out broad legal protections and procedures for people with disabilities who are in higher education and have some kind of, people with disabilities who are in higher education who require protections and may have grievances when those protections are not upheld. So Sac State specific resources, some of these you'll know, SSWD, TRIO, that one's actually new to me. I don't know very much about that one. PARC is the, I think, what is it? Peer and Academic Resource Center. It's not specifically for disabled students, but it would be a resource that is free or that is included in your tuition, and will go out of its way to like help you understand material if you are for any reason, disability or otherwise, not understanding it or not understanding it fast enough for the class. So the Office for Equal Opportunity at Sacramento State operates, again, post hoc. If you have any sort of issue, any charge of discrimination that you want to levy against the school or any complaint you want to make, they would probably be the people to go to. Not even if they can't do anything about it, they can't help you with it, they can tell you who can, is the idea. The non-Sac State specific resources, legal protections are many and varied. I don't argue that any of them are like perfect, but these are some like broad strokes. The U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights is an enforcement agency for federal level protections for disabled students in higher education. The California Department of California Department of Fair Employment and Housing is more or less what it says in the tin. It's for employees of public institutions, I think. It's another enforcement agency for state and federal policy. It obviously state run, but like federal policy is also the province of the state. Anyway, the Department of Rehabilitation is a state level, but you'll find them in almost every state, we found out, resource for specifically financial aid. And from my understanding, it mostly, cases for the Department of Rehabilitation tend to cover things like tuition and textbooks. So that can be a huge help on the financial side of things. I can tell you for certain, for me, it has been a huge help. So here's the bit where we toss around some ideas about how to increase accessibility, like what we can do about the problem, or the many and varied and layered and multifaceted problems. So one of the key points, I think, in this whole discourse about increasing accessibility is going to be a concept called universal design. In the broadest possible strokes, universal design is the philosophy of design whereby a thing is made such that anybody can successfully use it, regardless of, or at least across a very wide range of sorts of ways your body and brain can get built. A universally designed building, for example, is going to have stairs, maybe, but also things like ramps and elevators. It's going to have, I don't know, the handicap stall you're used to seeing, even in buildings that do not have ramps and elevators for some reason. A universally designed, but it probably will have significantly more than just that, on account of various kinds of mobility impairments that people can and sometimes do have, who then, won't be able to use the building. That's how. Universal design in the classroom, I think, looks a little bit different. One of the things that we have discussed here, at least among the officers, and probably you've noticed the trend as well if you've been a student for a little while, is that typically the professor's way of mitigating the risk of academic dishonesty on things like tests and homework and such is to give you very little time in which to do it, which is an issue for people who have things going on in their lives, or things like limited stamina, or in my case, poor vision. It can be a real problem. And oftentimes, like a resource like SSWD can make proactive academic accommodations such that you can like give your professor a letter at the beginning of the semester and have extra time on tests and stuff. But what if you are, I don't know, for some reason missed by SSWD, or you don't manage to present that letter in time, because that's strange, isn't it? Like the onus is on you to make your classroom more accessible, whereas you are the person with the harder, the more burdens to bear anyway. In that case, in such a case where your professor doesn't like isn't able or doesn't accommodate, it might make more sense to lift time constraints and instead design tests and homework in such a way that cheating is non-trivial, even with the internet, even if you are in an online class sitting at home with like an ebook textbook in front of you. That can take a number of forms, but I will offer the suggestion that in general, writing questions on tests that are not simple parodies of the textbook that you couldn't get from just like searching some key terms in either Google or in like a Control F function in the textbook would be a start, would be a way to design tests in such a way that if you wanted to cheat, you effectively couldn't. There wouldn't be enough, I don't know, you wouldn't be able to even answer the question with the textbook if you didn't actually understand the material. I've seen professors do that. It can be done in very, very clever ways, such that you can give ample, if not, probably not, usually infinite time on things like online tests. Papers and stuff like that also pretty handily circumvent the idea of cheating, because you have to synthesize your own sort of points in a paper. Anyway, these are pretty surface level, I admit, basic ideas for how to increase accessibility in the classroom. They're all ways of baking that accessibility in, like designing the class in such a way that theoretically any student should be able to enter the class and do reasonably well on the material and understand it going forward. That's something crucial. Yeah. The other a point that probably does need to be made, because I hadn't thought of it having been a student for so very long, is that we have the ability to normalize by insistence the process of asking for help. Right? The students can and sometimes need to ask professors for things like extra time and accommodations and such. And if that is done more often, it will be understood as more, normal, a thing that a student might do, even if that student is, say, smart, even if that student is capable, even if that student, normally does well in classes. Ordinarily, asking for help is sort of understood, at least by people who think like I do, as something to be done if absolutely necessary, or by people who don't, really take the class very seriously, and for whatever reason need extra time for procrastination or something like that. The mentality doesn't necessarily make sense. It's psychology, but the point is that it's not rational, right? You might need help or extra time for any number of reasons. It would be ideal, closer to ideal anyway, if it were more typical of students to do things like that amount to asking for help. Next one. Yeah, this one is more to do with the design of classrooms and buildings themselves. This is where universal design really sort of originates as a concept. I think it's architectural. Doing things like having fewer students per class, such that more professors have more time to speak with individual students. and make, if universal design proves impossible for the course itself, then accommodations will still need to be made sometimes. Therefore, giving professors more time per student would be closer to ideal. Yeah. And yeah, one of the, sorry, I had to read it for a second there. One of the points that has come up, at least certainly in my mind very often, is that most mechanisms whereby classrooms and universities and everything else becomes more accessible is in the process of being remade. Like, it's an expression of like the fact that people are trying to make things more accessible on top of the system that existed before. That the ADA requires accessibility be built in some limited ways, only to facilities that are being remodeled or are brand new outright. So an older building is very unlikely to be accessible. And honestly, even newer ones have had serious problems, or at any rate, inconsistencies that we, as the officers of Disabled Non-Disabled Alliance, have personal experience with. And that, on the face of it, doesn't make any sense. So if we were to, but it's possible because they can get around it by the letter of the law, right? Or by lax enforcement practices and so on and so forth like that. It would be seemingly, on the again, prima facie, it would be better if we could have a public policy arranged in such a way that incentivizes or subsidizes or uses any number of carrots and sticks to get buildings and particularly universities made more accessible proactively, like without the need for the building to be remodeled for some other reason first, and then bathrooms are a big one for people with mobility impairments, not so much me specifically, but some problems that have been discussed. For example, I mentioned like inconsistencies in accessible design. It's the weirdest thing. You find that some bathrooms are built accessible and some are not in the same building. Some don't have, I think most have handicap stalls, but they still have doors you can't reasonably be expected to be able to open if you're a wheelchair user. These kinds of things pop up all the time. And it's the impression I get from people who do have much more firsthand experience with this sort of thing, and it being a problem, I should say, is that it's quite embarrassing. It's quite awkward and honestly dehumanizing, is my impression, to have the facility that literally everybody who enters that building is going to is some percentage likely to use be designed in such a way that it is exclusive,
Yeah,
then,
I actually do have like some kind of has some kind of short story about it. So like so like I was like in Sequoia Hall, like in the computer lab on the third floor, just like doing my work, and then, I needed to use the restroom. So what I had to do was go downstairs and go to Placer Hall just to use the restroom, and then I came back to Sequoia Hall to like do my work because like that's where like my computer lab is at. So like that's really difficult for me. It made it like a lot more time consuming for me because there's no like I checked the bathroom and I couldn't actually fit in there. I'm in a wheelchair, so the bathroom like door is so small I couldn't fit through it. So yeah.
And I see someone contributed to the chat. Looks like Annie. In Douglas Hall, she was happy. She or they? Sorry, him. They. I don't
All
see
of
the
the
pronoun.
above.
Okay. They're happy to see that in the restrooms there were foot pedals for the toilets, and that's something that a lot of people don't think about because I think when designing bathrooms, you just assume that everybody can reach back and flush the toilet from the top of the tank, but that's not always the case. And honestly, I do have some upper body mobility, but I can't always reach back or even reach forward to flush the toilet. So if there were a pedal that I could roll over or push down on with my grabber or something to flush it. Just in general in public, that would be pretty helpful too.
And a point I'm going to emphasize here, because I'll forget about it later, is that at least theoretically, a pedal can be designed in such a way that it is basically universal design, and also not significantly more expensive than like the usual means. The usual means, the sort of, I don't know, that the stick, that sort of, I don't know what that thing is, the handle, is just one of many possible ways to engineer this solution, this flushing of the toilet. And it's really honestly strange to find that new toilets are being made with that old tech, because there is, as I understand, I don't think any engineering reason why toilets couldn't be universally designed in the way that was exactly just like described. At least that would be much closer to universal design. I don't think it'd be more expensive or anything of the sort. The reason that the toilets are lacking is probably more because manufacturers aren't making enough of them, making them more expensive relative to the demand. And because architects and people who are planning committee members and things of that, people in those positions are not thinking about disability. That's part of why we're here. Also, on the topic of making colleges more universally designed, more accessible, just make them free. There is essentially no reason why this should be a liberal position. Making higher education more accessible to more people makes us more profitable, and I'm pretty sure everybody wants that. So yeah, this is not a meeting to litigate on the details or the moral political philosophy behind making public colleges and universities free, but I would point you to any of the many countries that do this at the national level, and their populations and economies being healthier than ours. Riff on that now if you want. This is the discussion portion where we have some things to optionally talk about. One of them, yeah, I'm going to this bit. One of them is, I'll just read these out. I haven't given us too terribly much time before the clock strikes 8. So take any of these that you want and shut me up, like keep me from talking for the next little while, because this is something where other people have more experience, I think, more to say. I've tended to do well on my own account in academia.
And you can use the chat too. It's a free for all. You have something to say, board it out.
Yeah. Although I can't see chat, so would anybody else mind monitoring that? I'm not able to bring it up.
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of start. So I'll just do like tell us about a time when a professor commented you and what you needed in the classroom. Yeah, honestly, like in every class that I went to, like they accommodated me like perfectly. Like I didn't really have to like ask like more than once. And I think like I'm in environmental studies, and like I'm in such a small major, so it's like everyone kind of knows each other, and like yeah, everyone's kind of knows each other and like knows to kind of accommodate like someone. But like for like bigger like majors like business and like biology, maybe that's not really the case. And I think I do remember one time when I was like in biology class, I took bio 1 and it came with a lab, and like I couldn't actually use the microphone microscope because it was like too tall for me. So it's like that I can't really do anything. But then like they accommodated me by having like a visual microphone microscope. So it's like a screen where I could like zoom in and like do that instead of like trying to like reach over because I'm too short for it. Yeah, I guess like those were the times.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one of the I think the theme when we're talking about accessibility in general is kind of pessimistic. At least it is when I'm involved, um, and like there's good reason for that. But it's also true that that the people doing the teaching, the people who go out of their way to become college professors, despite that not being a very profitable profession, don't tend to be evil. Like they'll do their best. So yeah, we get pleasant surprises, and that's nice.
I'll go next if no one else wants to.
Do it.
So I'm tackling how would you improve accessibility at Sac State, and I think this sort of works broader at basically any college, because I see it that there's two main sort of paths to focus on or go down. Both have merit, but one's a little more pie in the sky, one's a little more tangible. Because like ideally you would be like, these are really educated people, and if we make them aware of these sort of baked in biases, they will confront them because they value the truth and sort of proper education and facts of things and adjust this sort of things. That's a little, I don't want to say pie in the sky. That sounds like you were alluding to cynicism. That's a little rough, but like a little dream big, like long term. That would be sort of something of a goal, but that ain't happening tomorrow. That probably ain't happening in 5 years. Maybe we'll gradually chip away at it, type of a thing. In the meantime, I don't know how it functions here at Sac State, but I had a really good experience. Like I forgot the name of American River College's sort of like disabled, like here's the people you go to get extra time on test group, whatever that is. But when I met with the lady, like her approach was like, tell me sort of like your kind of background. I think tell me the things you would need, and let's find a way to sort of use what you have documented to get you those things. Like functionally, I don't want to say gaming the system. That's especially with the system being rigged in the first place. But like functionally, like let's find a way to get you the things that you need using this. Like that's sort of my job, and that kind of advocacy, finding people who can be your advocates or help you advocate for yourself, or find the sort of rhetoric and persuasion to get you what you need to be successful, to sort of overcome this very, very biased and sort of ridged in system. That is like a 2-day kind of solution we can implement with essentially with sort of like good sound rhetoric and game planning. We can use what people have documented to get them what they need to sort of not have the deck stacked against them. I think we can do that right now.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that's the thing that happens. And I kind of view it as a change in mentality as well. You have people in the sort of business of helping disabled students viewing their job not as instituting policy per se, not as like conforming to the letter of the law, but as helping disabled students. It completely changes the end results, the thing you get, because the law isn't perfect. At least the letter of the law isn't. So you kind of need that discretionary adjustment to be done on the fly in order for it to work. So yeah, I'm glad that's happening.
I think that that point about the letter of the law versus specifically making your goal to be helping disabled students is the key difference, not only for resource counselors and advocates like you find at SSWD, but also just in general, like on a professor to professor basis, or even with architects who design things. Like the point isn't to check boxes and make sure you're within the letter of the law. The point is to include disabled people from the very start. And if you didn't catch it at the very start, then do your best to include disabled people afterwards. With some professors I've had, honestly, the attitude they had towards their students were what made the biggest difference. Because you have professors that were just there to do their job as professor and focus all of the rest of their time on thesis work and grant proposals and research and stuff like that, because that is what they're there for a lot of the time. It's universities aren't primarily learning centers necessarily, they're research centers. And it's an institution made for research and learning, but with a focus on research. And that's why you often get professors that just don't care about their students or don't care about teaching, or even don't even know how to teach, because they're not trained to be teachers. They're just there to throw knowledge at other people. But if they care about their students, you can see it, you can feel it, and it's very obvious that they do everything they can to help all of their students succeed. The best teachers I've had were like that, and they had absolutely no issues when I asked for extensions on projects, or if I asked for some extra help or guidance on something, or if I asked for more accessibility in terms of like captions on their videos and enabling live captions in some of their lectures. But then there are the teachers who were just kind of there and didn't particularly care about their students. They only cared about, what result you got. And whenever I came up to those type of professors with my accommodations, they had some pushback. They would be kind of passive aggressive, or they'd consistently forget to caption or enable captions after I told them, hey, I need captions. Or they would deny extensions, saying that I need to be more responsible for myself, when, the whole reason I need an extension in the first place isn't a matter of responsibility. It's a matter of my disability is causing me issues here, and it's not necessarily my fault that I need extra time on this. And honestly, I do think extensions in general should be more welcome and more frequently given to people in general, because sometimes shit hits the fan, and you don't need a disability to have to get an extension. You should be able to get one if stuff starts going downhill, either mentally or financially, or if you're just in a really rough spot at the moment. And the burden of proof that a lot of professors demand is really excessive. When in any other situation, people would give you that extension because they'd be like, oh yeah, no problem, just let me know. But with a lot of other professors, they're just like, no, you have to do it by the due date, or you are like super irresponsible and you don't deserve to be in this class. Like, what is up with that?
And if I can pop in real quick, sort of bounce
Oh
off,
yeah, totally. It's a free for all.
directly on that. Like another sort of like in the interim strategy that bouncing off that is like, when you have professors who are accommodating and are willing to work and adjust things, and this that and the third, what have you, like, so this is where sort of like networking, clubs like this let other disabled students know, hey, this is a professor that will work with you, and don't take it with this professor. I've had bad experiences. It's it's not going to work all the time, because like depending on your major, you're going to have to take a particular class probably from a particular professor that specializes in it. William and I are lucky because like the only class like that in philosophy is epistemology, and the professor for that is really awesome and incorporating. But if we weren't so lucky, then we'd be a little lost. But you can mitigate some of that through networking and making sure that when you find a good professor, if you can take more classes, do that. If you can direct students with disabilities who need additional help to take classes from them, do that. And tying it back into student government, bring that forward to them along that sort of thing. And then like that's another mechanism for change, I guess.
Yeah. So I have personally, and I'm sure other people are feeling the same way, I have so very, very much more to say But we're just past the 8th hour. Wait, no, the 20th hour, technically. So I'm going to go ahead and end the official meeting and the recording and such, but I'm going to leave this room open as I head to the restroom for people to continue discussing to the extent that we want to. So, and then I'll come back. So for now, for the benefit of the recording, thank you for joining us for today on the meeting of the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance. I know it was a strange one with an announcement right at the top from ASI, and honestly a topic that's way too big to be talking about in just an hour. So thank you for bearing with us. I hope you continue to think about these things, and hope you join us next time here, because it's going to happen next time. There's a cat on screen. It's very good. It's from my childhood. Yeah, next meeting is October 29th at 7 p.m. And we're thinking, based on the schedule, the tentative schedule that we have written out among the officers, that it's going to be a very, Halloween themed. It's going to be something along the lines of like cooking with disabilities with a Halloweeny sort of twist. That's the thought right now. So I hope you join us next time. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Bye,
night.
everyone. It was lovely joining here for the first time.
It's good
Thank
to
you.
join.